Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a totally fascinating contradiction. We're actually going to look at why everything society has taught you about human stature might literally be biologically backward.
Okay, so let's dive right into this. You know how we always tend to equate a really tall frame with exceptional health, physical dominance, and just undeniable social privilege? It's an assumption that's deeply hardwired into our culture. But what do the evolutionary and medical data actually say when we strip all those social biases away? Are taller people really built to outlast the rest of us?
Well, it turns out your biology completely disagrees with our social conditioning. As researcher Thomas T. Samaras points out right here, when you take an objective look at the data, smaller bodies are inherently optimized for living longer. We're talking about a biological setup that naturally wards off age-related chronic diseases, assuming, of course, you've got a baseline of healthy nutrition and lifestyle.
So here is exactly how we're going to unpack this today. 1. The tall myth. 2. Neanderthals and growth genes. 3. The short advantage. 4. Biological entropy. And 5. The shrinking biomarker. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, the tall myth, society versus biology.
We really need to confront this widespread assumption that a larger, taller frame automatically means superior health and pristine genetics. Look, society definitely says yes to height. It might offer perceived social advantages, things like higher social mobility, educational attainment, or mating benefits in Western societies. But an objective evaluation tells a totally different story. Biology shows us that being tall comes with some massive physiological trade-offs. It's basically a classic case where what looks great on a magazine cover actually introduces a whole lot of mechanical and cellular stress under the hood.
Moving on to Section 2, Neanderthals and growth genes, the evolutionary twist.
To understand why some of us are built so large today, we've got to trace the genetic breadcrumbs back to our ancient ancestors. Just notice the stark contrast here. On one side, we have the incredibly thick, heavy, extremely muscular Neanderthal build. And on the other, the leaner, lighter, thinner-boned early Homo sapiens frame. Now, early Homo sapiens were generally taller than Neanderthals initially, but they were gracile, which basically means they were built for pure efficiency, not heavy mass.
So, what does this mean for us today? Well, interbreeding introduced specific Neanderthal variants right into the Homo sapiens lineage, and these genes often act as skeletal expanders and growth accelerators. They pumped up our bone marrow density, and through a form of hybrid vigor, they actually created taller offspring than either parent group. But here's the biological cost. By developing these heavier, taller frames, modern humans were pushed away from that highly efficient, pure Homo sapiens longevity baseline. Essentially, we traded long-term cellular efficiency for these robust, larger bodies. It's kind of the biological equivalent of swapping out a Prius for a Hummer.
All right, Section 3, the short advantage, looking at the hard data. So, if that original, smaller frame was more efficient for survival, what does modern medical data say about the optimal height for living a long life? Check out this breakdown. Your longevity potential stays at a perfect 100% for heights up to 5'4". People in this range literally have the highest statistical probability of delayed cardiovascular aging and keeping their mobility. But look at what happens next. The potential starts to drop meaningfully as height increases beyond 5'4". By the time you hit 5'6", longevity potential has already dropped to 90%, and the mean age at death actually begins to decline.
And we see this validated at an incredible scale. Take a look at this massive epidemiological study of over 845,000 adult deaths in Poland. By tracking subjects born across several decades, researchers found this really consistent inverse relationship. Lifespan literally goes down as height goes up. Taller individuals consistently had a lower age at death compared to their shorter peers, and this was especially true among men. It's just a striking visual that challenges absolutely everything we assume about physical stature.
Which brings us to Section 4, biological entropy, the cellular cost of size.
The big question is, why exactly does being taller mean your body essentially ages faster? Honestly, it comes down to pure biological wear and tear. A larger body physically requires more cells, right? And more cells mean a higher baseline rate of DNA replication over the decades. Mathematically, that just increases your chances of DNA damage and cancer. But it's not just happening at the cellular level, there's a heavy mechanical strain too. A taller frame creates an elevated pressure gradient that your heart has to constantly overcome just to pump blood. Plus, it results in significantly higher joint and skeletal compression over your lifetime. Basically, it's just a much more expensive machine to run.
Finally, let's fit Section 5, the shrinking biomarker, and the danger of losing height.
Let's look at how all this builds into old age, because it's not just about how tall you are right now, it's about how much height you lose over time. This is actually a massive biomarker for your overall health. Now first, we should establish that a little bit of shrinking is a completely normal part of aging. Starting in our 30s and 40s, middle-aged men lose about 1 millimeters a year, and women lose nearly 1.3 millimeters a year, largely because of estrogen loss and bone density changes during menopause. So we all slowly shrink a bit due to natural spinal compression. But the exact rate of that shrinking, that is what you need to watch.
3 centimeters. That's the magic, or really the dangerous number. Losing 3 centimeters or more per decade is the critical threshold. When an older adult is losing height at this accelerated rate, it's no longer just normal aging. It's a major warning sign. It signals a dangerous, accelerated decline in physical fitness and bone integrity.
Crossing that 3 centimeter per decade threshold is seriously alarming. When you look at the data here, for those losing 3 centimeters or more, you see a massive spike in cardiovascular disease, respiratory failure, and just overall all-cause mortality. It strongly correlates with osteoporosis, physical frailty, and a way higher risk of fractures. Tracking height loss is an incredibly reliable and totally free measure of an older individual's biological condition.
Ultimately, while society might incorrectly put a premium on being tall, your biology deeply rewards being compact. Being shorter means lower metabolic stress, less mechanical strain on your heart and your joints, and a much cleaner cellular replication record. It really is a biological superpower for longevity. So it turns out, not being able to reach the top shelf actually pays off in the long run.
So this leaves us with a fascinating final thought to take away. You obviously can't change your genetic stature or the genes you inherited from our ancient ancestors. But knowing the immense dangers of accelerated skeletal compression and height loss, how will you protect your spine, your diet, and your posture today to ensure a long, healthy life tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this completely changes the way you view the biology of human height.